Doctor Who. It's a British institution. It's been around for 62 years at this point, and it's been run into the ground in recent years. We were all excited to see Russell T Davies come back. He was gonna resurrect the franchise. He was gonna bring it back to its former glory. I mean, this is the guy who brought it back after a 15-year hiatus. But it turns out he didn't really, and it was just identity politics shoved down our throats with a new Doctor who seemed to be a bit of an incompetent idiot for the most part. He spent most of his time crying. And we seem to be now in the point where they have finished shooting season 2. It's not come out yet, obviously, of the 15th Doctor's run. But that might be it. Apparently, Ncuti Gatwa wants to leave. He's on the way out. Russell T Davies is probably going to follow him, and according to the latest rumors, the BBC is going to shelve the show for at least 5 years. Not before time. I hope this is true. I hope all of this comes to pass, actually, because, man, this show is just dead. Dead as it can possibly be.
It is rather suspicious that Russell T Davies, around the same time we get these rumors, has announced, I'm doing a Channel 4 series now. Yes. So it definitely seems to be tied together. I can understand Ncuti Gatwa wanting to do American movies. Most British actors seem to want to go over to America at some point anyway. It is weird to me. He's never really seemed to care about the character as a whole, even right from the start. It was he was never the Doctor. The Doctor was him. Everything was about showcasing him and his personality, and he just played the same roles as everything else. I'm glad that it's gone. The last series was... it's why when you said the most hateful Marvel show before, there's many competitions for that. You had
Secret Invasion was pretty hateful.
Yeah, Secret Invasion and this. And that last series was full of so much identitarian stuff in every single episode. He never saved a character. In any episode. He cried in every single episode, multiple times in some of them. And when I was doing my video, I was so spoiled for choice of the clips that I could use to show it, I had to just stop. Otherwise the video could have gone on forever. So I don't want any of them back, frankly. And I think it breaks for the best.
Yeah.
Well, Russell T Davies has been clamoring for a third season for a while now. He's been begging Disney and the BBC to push on a third season because this actually got 2 seasons from Disney, £100 million to spend on them. And then they went very quiet after the first season. So after the first season, with the second season guaranteed, he was already begging for them to renew it. Nothing came of that whatsoever. It never popped a rating on the Nielsen charts for Disney Plus. So it clearly failed miserably there. It went further down in the UK. This year's Christmas special was seen by approximately 1 million less than the previous one from him. So he's at an all-time low. The show now holds a record. Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor now holds records for, I think, the 3 lowest viewed episodes of Doctor Who of all time out of the bottom 4. And then if you go on to the top 10, it's something like 6 out of the top 10. So it's absolutely dead. This isn't a show. Nobody cares. Doctor died probably 2017, 2016 after the first season of the 14th 14th Doctors.
And you know how with a lot of these we'll say like, oh, this will be studied or this will be tracked and this will be put into a book someday. Like this is the one that you really can say that about because it's almost now at the point of being shoved away forever and you'll never see it again. Like they took a long time, they've killed it very gradually, and now it's just fucking beyond dead.
There's ways you can fix it.
Well, there is, but it requires getting rid of people like Russell T Davies.
Yes.
Because I've seen so many interviews with him where literally all he talks about is the fact that he's a gay man and he wants to work that into the storylines. And he admits multiple times, I can't conceive of any other way of seeing the world than mine. That's it. It feels natural to me, and that's the only thing I can write about. And I just thought, isn't that fascinating as a creative force and a showrunner that you can literally only see the world from the perspective of your life. Your life is the only way that you can imagine anyone living. And that has to be reflected in what you write. You couldn't possibly write characters that are different from that. It's
You know,
amazing to be so narcissistic that that's what your focus becomes.
I'd say like on the notion of fixing it, I don't think it would save it if they had a full season of good episodes come out. I feel like even that it's just too late. Like nobody gives a shit anymore, and that's why a gap is probably the way to go. Because if in 5 years plus they say like we're bringing the new season of Doctor Who, at least everyone will be like, okay, well who's making this one, and is this a new attempt, new fresh start? You know, let's see how this goes. Versus right now, if you drop a really good season of TV, I just don't think people are going to care anyway. They'll be like, eh.
I think the issue is, even if you replace the people that made Doctor Who, you've still got the BBC there overseeing everything, controlling everything. I don't actually think it can change until you got rid of the BBC as an institution, or made them care about advertisers, so got rid of their entire funding model, so they had to care what people thought. There's even 10 years, I'm not sure they'll be able to fix it.
I think it's interesting because, like, up until Doctor Who, I'd been fairly just disinterested in the BBC. Like, I just didn't care one way or another. But like, that show actually made me despise the very essence of what they are. The fact that we, as British people, as British taxpayers, we are literally fucking forced to finance these dog shit shows, and we have to pay for it. That's it. I think, of course, they're going to keep making garbage like this because they've got no reason not to. It doesn't matter if no one watches it because we fucking have to pay for it.
And it's getting worse it's getting worse in the future because while at the moment it's the license fee, they were now looking at it, and one of the things that were raised was just making it like adding on a tax to Netflix.
Tax,
and stuff.
Yeah.
So they either make it a general taxation, or when you pay for Netflix, you are also paying for Doctor Who, which is wild.
Wow. Has this gone to the point where it's so bad that it's tarnished your love for the older content?
Certainly not looking to reprise it. I would, go back and watch certain episodes or certain seasons before, and since all this Whittaker nonsense happened, I haven't touched any of that. I don't think it is beyond repair in as much as it does probably need a 10-year gap, or certainly a substantial gap in years, at minimum 5, but most likely around 10. And then if you were to bring it back, you'd have to bring it back with people with the right intentions, and you'd probably have to fever dream after Capaldi, or even, unfortunately, fever dream Capaldi out as well, because he was a great Doctor with some poor material, and just literally kind of go into maybe sat next to a kid, just explaining to this kid that it was just some sort of master fever dream, or the Vanguard got involved, or Valiard got involved, or something along that line. And then you just kind of like, right. And then you realize that the kid's actually this wanted space alien. And then he just sort of drags them in. Then you start the adventure off from there. You literally hard reset it.
It is going to be, bringing it back in any capacity is going to be tough, though. And I kind of agree with Muller's assessment that once you poison people's love towards a franchise like this, once you've made it so divisive and made it so obvious that the makers of this show fucking hate you as the audience, it is really difficult to then get back into it. It's really difficult to build that trust again with them.
Yeah. And going to Brawler's question, whether it affected things, the rest of it didn't. The issue is when you brought back Davis and Tennant, it did make me think less of both of those. It was the same problem with Secret Invasion. When you bring back the actual actors and then destroy them, that's what affects the previous work for me, rather than doing another regeneration with an entirely new showrunner and stuff. I can mentally split that. And I do think with what Critical Drinker said about people only being able to see things from their perspective, Tennant is another one of those people. And the more you have in your head that people don't think the same way, everyone seems to assume that everyone sees the world like them. They don't. Some people are just incapable of seeing other people's perspectives. You notice it everywhere. And I do think it's responsible for a significant part of the problem in Hollywood, that you've just hired a load of people who... Because if you only hire people of one leaning, it might just be that leaning has more of one problem. That's what makes them believe that kind of stuff in the first place. And I think that's essentially what's happened. You've hired a load of people who are deficient and can't actually... perceive these stories. They can't understand them, they can't think about them, and so they can never fix them.
The fascinating thing that's come out is this. I think you referenced it in your video, even this article in the Radio Times about how Doctor Who needs to be woke, and there's a reason every sci-fi fan should agree. And essentially their premise, because it's so funny, right? You go through this like stages of admission of what the real message is here, right? And it's usually like, no, it's not happening, and then, well, maybe it's happening, but that's a good thing, and then eventually you end up as like, yeah, it's been happening all along, and you're just too stupid to understand it, you pleb.
And then it needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And they just like skipped straight to that final stage of like, yeah, well, it's always been woke, okay, and it's always had this stuff in it, so why don't you get that? And it tries to redefine this whole understanding of what, you know, the modern parlance for what woke is, where it's like overbearing political lectures that get forced into every piece of fiction. They're trying to like redefine it as, well, no, it's just an awareness of like social injustice. And of course, Doctor Who's been fighting against that forever because it's that anti-capitalist, empirical ideas in it. The small guy fighting for freedom against the evil tyranny, all that stuff. It's like you're trying to equate like universal philosophical ideas of like self-determination and you know, freedom of speech with these very partisan modern day political like bits of propaganda that are getting shoved into everything. They are 100% not the same fucking thing, but you're trying to redefine the meaning of words to make them mean what you want them to mean so that they can back up your shitty argument. Yeah, this is the sort of thing that pisses me off.
It's one of the most extreme examples of sort of Mott and Bailey argument I've ever seen, where she kind of goes, well, woke just means you're aware racism exists in the world, so therefore you must agree with all of this. And by the end of the article, she literally says every single thing ever made out all of history has been woke. I'm like, wait, what?
No.
It's like, no, you just didn't realize it. So again, well, if you agree with this, you must agree with everything else that I say in the rest of the article.
The crux of it is, it's the old argument of like, well, sci-fi has to hold a mirror up to our modern day society. It's like, no, that is the fucking the scummiest argument that you ever get in situations like this, right? Science fiction presents you with different perspectives. Yes. It gives you a different lens to look through current issues with, from a different perspective, from a sci-fi perspective, and it removes them from current day context, and it allows you to see things and think about things from a different point of view. It doesn't force you to think a certain way. It doesn't project ideas onto you, and it doesn't say, well, if you disagree with this, then you're clearly a monster. That is what good science fiction does. It makes you think. It doesn't tell you what to think.
There's also, if I remember, I don't have the article in front of me at the moment, but I think she says it's supposed to hold up a mirror to our society. Otherwise, what's the point? And then about 2 paragraphs later goes, we use the entertainment for escapism.
Yes.
One.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if there's an element of like hyper childishness with all these writers where they just want to say, you know, Picard would agree with my politics, actually. You know, fucking your Rocky, Rambo, they both agree with my politics. Super Mario would agree with my politics.
Oh, God, that's the movie Bob argument, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mario would be so sad the way gamers are treating people now.